think the Russian army has lost about 25,000 troops with their equipment and tanks, etc. That will represent a weakening of Russian military capability that the Ukrainians will be looking to exploit. The Ukrainians for months have already been communicating to individual Russian soldiers and families saying, come on, why are you here? You don't have to die here. I think they're going to crank that up significantly. Defense Minister Reznikov already yesterday was communicating to Russian troops saying you don't have to die. The real enemies are not in Ukraine. Your real enemies are in Moscow.
President Putin may have avoided fighting on the streets of Moscow, but his future is looking far from certain after a whirlwind 36 hours that saw the Wagner Group mercenaries seize 2 cities. A deal's been struck with the Wagner boss Yevgeny Prigozhin, but he's now promised to leave for Belarus. But what happens now to that private army group, and where does Ukraine go from here? I'll speak to Lieutenant General Ben Hodges, a former commander of the US Army Forces in Europe. Ben, good morning.
Hey, good morning, guys.
What do we know about the deal that has helped to de-escalate this situation?
Well, actually, there's not much that we do know about the deal for sure. I'm anxious to find out what is Prigozhin's real future. I can't imagine he's just going to lounge in Belarus for the rest of his life. What about what happens to his enterprise, particularly in Africa, in Mali and Libya, where he has most of his troops that are overseas? What did Lukashenko get out of this thing? That's to me one of the bizarre aspects, that President Putin had to turn to Lukashenko to bail this out. And of course, I think the president of the Russian Federation looks really weak right now.
There are also changes at the top of the Russian military as well. We understand some of the details of that we're still yet to figure out. What is that likely to mean?
Well, this is part of the challenge of trying to understand what goes on inside Russia. There is no transparency there. At least during the Cold War days, we all had sort of a sense of who was next in line and who was doing what. It's less clear these days. Shoigu and Gerasimov, I think anybody else's government would have been gone a long time ago for their failures, both from the beginning of this special military operation as well as currently. It looks like they are going to be sacked or reassigned or something as part of an agreement, but I don't know if this was all prearranged or this is finally the excuse that Putin needed. I think he kept them around because he never had to question their loyalty. So who does he have that the military, and this would be important, I think, that the military would immediately recognize as a capable professional soldier that could help right the ship, if you will. I don't know that they have a guy out there.
You understand armies. You understand the mentality and morale and the way it works. What will this moment have done to Russian troops?
So that's a terrific question. And the Ukrainians, of course, will exploit some opportunities I think that they see as a result of this. We know that the Russian army and mercenaries and security forces all hate each other, and they hate the Chechens as well. So there is no sort of cohesive kind of framework or fabric of the Russian military. It really is there are a bunch of different sort of camps or tribes, if you will, loyal to whoever's at the top of their sort of organization. I would imagine if I was a young or mid-grade officer in the Russian army right now, or even a soldier that has a little bit of sense of what's going on, I would be very, very uneasy as well as unenthusiastic about fighting, because now it's starting to feel like maybe this whole thing is lost, or what am I here for? What's our purpose? And if you sense that the people above you are wavering or weak, or they themselves are waiting to see how this all settles, who wants to be the last soldier killed in a lost cause or in the final days or weeks? So I think this will affect their willingness to fight.
In terms of Ukraine, Ben, is this really a People talk about an opportunity for them to perhaps intensify their counteroffensive. Obviously, Putin is, in a sense, weakened. Is it really an opportunity for them?
I think there's an opportunity in two or three aspects. First of all, Russia has just lost 25,000 soldiers. I mean, the 25,000 troops supposedly under Prigozhin are either they're going to leave, or according to this deal, what we've heard publicly, they're going to be re-registered, if you will, into the army, into the Ministry of Defense. I suspect that every one of them is going to be looked at with suspicion and seen as unreliable. It certainly are not going to be cohesive units that are going to be there. They're going to be sent back in as individual replacements. So in effect, I think the Russian army has lost about 25,000 troops with their equipment and tanks, et cetera. That will represent a weakening of Russian military capability that the Ukrainians will be looking to exploit. The Ukrainians for months have already been communicating to individual Russian soldiers and families saying, come on, why are you here? You don't have to die here. I think they're going to crank that up significantly. Defense Minister Reznikov already yesterday was communicating to Russian troops saying, you don't have to die. The real enemies are not in Ukraine. Your real enemies are in Moscow. So I think we'll see some of that. But I also imagine, I don't know this, of course, but I imagine that the Ukrainian General Staff will wait a little bit to see what does happen. Give the Russians a chance to fall apart or to start leaving or to something else rather than rush in again. But I don't know.
This is a story then of a mercenary army who've turned inward, who've threatened to threaten a coup, effectively, and seem to have at least secured something of a negotiation. It seems that at least something has come out of this for those at the top of the Wagner Group. Are other mercenary armies in other parts of the world potentially looking on at this moment and seeing it as a bit of a case study for how they themselves could perhaps get something out of their country?
Well, that could be. I imagine you're right. But Prigozhin had to have had a sense or knowledge that he had broader support than just his own 25,000 troops. I mean, to do what he did was either the boldest gambit ever, or he was pretty confident that he was going to be welcomed. What we don't know was, what did he plan to stop all along? I mean, 400 vehicles, even 400 armored vehicles, would disappear before he got anywhere near the center of town in a city like Moscow, a massive metro area. So clearly, he was not just going to drive into Red Square and then take over. So I think he had to have a sense that there was support, and maybe that support evaporated. We don't know who was paid off. But yes, I can imagine other mercenary type organizations looking at this and saying, okay, you're going to have confidence that the thing will collapse on the inside. You know, we watched, it's not a mercenary case, but it was an attempted coup in Turkey a few years ago. And that thing fell apart before it really got started because I think the planners overestimated the support they would have.
Right. So lessons for other mercenaries as well, then, at the very least, I suppose. Goodness me. Ben, really nice to talk to you this morning. Incredibly insightful. Thank you.
Thanks for the privilege.
Lieutenant General Ben Hodges, former commander of the US Army Forces in Europe.
Now,